Okay, I will call the meeting of September 14th to order. It is 6:04 and roll call.
Chairman Beecham.
Here.
Straubing.
Here.
Salzwedel.
Here.
Cadwalder.
Here.
And Chambers
Here.
is the new liaison for the city council, as he was just appointed to city council last week, so congratulations, Marty.
Congratulations.
So we are at a 4-member board at the present time, missing one person, or one position. Okay, moving on to approval of the agenda. Any additions, changes?
Fortunately, no additions.
No additions. Okay,
Good.
I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to approval of the minutes of the August 9th regular board meeting. I would, go ahead.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay,
And I would support.
okay. It's been moved and supported to approve the August 9th, 2017 regular board meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to public comment. Any public comment? Hearing no public comment, we will move on to action items. And I'll turn that over to you, Steve.
All right, we have a number of action items tonight, but the first four,
Yep. We're switching to Mark.
the first four all relate to Mark Beauchamp. He was here in May when he presented the results of our cost of service study. And Mark this evening has the recommendations for our new rate structure that he'll be presenting. But I also hired Mark to perform a number of other services for us, including the development of a cash reserves policy, the development of an economic development rate, and the modification or updating our current line extension policy. So Mark will be presenting all four of these topics in a PowerPoint presentation, but we will stop at the end of each individual topic to have discussion, answer questions, and hopefully approve each of his four things he'll be presenting on. So the first thing he'll be presenting tonight is the recommended rates as the result of our cost of service study, using the parameters that the board approved in May, which were a 1.45% increase with a bandwidth of 1% in addition to the 1.45 or 1% below that. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here again and present the results of the rate design. And after the guidance was given to us in May, of course, we went back and designed the rates that would fit within the parameters of the guidance that you had provided to us. One of the things I want to emphasize is, even though it's going to sound weird, even though we're having a rate increase, rates are actually projected to decrease. And the reason that sounds like an oxymoron is because your rate structure has a power cost adjustment within it. And power cost adjustment floats based on actual power cost. But these power costs are actually projected to decline. And the decrease in the power supply cost is going, even with the rate increase, is going to result in an average reduction of 5%, 4.82 reduction in electric rates. So I just want to emphasize that. I know it sounds so weird, we're increasing rates, but rates are going down. And that's because your current rates are structured in a manner where that power supply costs are passed through, but we're projecting the power supply costs to decrease. And that's because of Bell River. So it's pretty much a sure thing that we're going to see substantial reductions in power supply costs. Right? So, after we get done with the rate design and the discussion, I want to talk about the economic development rate. Steve had asked me to look at and develop an economic development rate in a manner that doesn't harm existing ratepayers. You're gonna hear me say those same words with the line extension policy. And I know that sounds weird again, to develop a rate reduction for new customers, and it doesn't harm existing ratepayers. And you can do that by looking at the contribution margin that a new customer is going to generate to help pay for fixed cost recovery. Now, the problem with economic development rates, you can offer them, but they have to have a sunset. You can only offer them for so long. And the reason you can only offer it for so long is that when we look at the development of this rate, like if you look at the transformer, for example, in the substation, that transformer has adequate capacity. So that new customer comes on and uses that excess capacity. It doesn't cost us anything immediately. But as time goes on and the system grows, eventually that transformer is going to need to be, and another one's going to need to be added. And so there's additional costs there, of which that new customer is partly responsible for. So that's why these economic development rates have to sunset. So, and I'll talk about that when I get to the economic development rate. And then the cash reserve policy, which is a critical aspect for both your financial security and stability going forward, but also for bond ratings. And we discussed it in May, how we calculated it. And what we did here is we took our calculation, tweaked it a little bit, and put it into a policy format, and then simplify it. And I'll go through the process of that simplification. And the last part of it is a line extension policy. And again, how much can Lowell Light and Power contribute toward the extension of a new customer without harming existing ratepayers? Because you want growth to benefit everybody. You want it to be good for the community, but you need to be fair to the new customer also. And if you have a line extension policy that harms new customers, it can create a barrier to growth. So what we do is we look at where is that break point? Where can we set our contribution toward for these new customers' extensions, where we can identify how much the customer would pay and how much Lowell Light and Power would pay, and do it in a manner that doesn't harm existing ratepayers. And we do it in the same manner as the economic development rate by looking at the fixed cost recovery or the contribution margin. Does that make sense? And I'll go through that. These line extension policies that you're going to see are ones that we probably developed for probably over 100 utilities nationwide. Almost identical format. So I'll go through the results of that study and what the recommended structure of that line extension policy would look like. So, first thing is the proposed rate design. Back in May, we were instructed to have a 1.4% rate adjustment with a 1% bandwidth. So in other words, it was actually 1.45. No customer would see an increase greater an increase greater than 2.45, but everybody would see at least a 0.45. So when you look at this, we use the cost of service study results to give us the guidance of what classes need to move a little bit more. Your cost of service study wasn't way out of line, but it was to some degree. We needed to move. And so the residential's got the higher end increase, 2.45%, and I'll show you what that impact is. It's a relatively small dollar adjustment. The large customers, the general service demand, primary, and transfer ownership, those actually saw rate reductions when we did. But we couldn't go quite to the 0.45 because we were limited on the upper end by only being able to increase residential by 2.45. So we had to give them a little bit more than we wanted to, but we gave them a 1% increase, not the average increase of 1.45. Right. Now I'm going to show you the impacts on the customers. But before I do, I want to show you actually what our projected changes to customers are going to be after this increase. And if you look at this slide, even though I said residentials are going to see a 2.45% reduction, based on our
Increase.
projection.
Increase.
Increase, sorry. They're actually gonna see a decrease of 3.12. And that's because of the reduction in the power cost adjustments that are a pass-through. Does that make sense? And overall, on average, your customers are gonna see about a 4.82% reduction in rates.
So, can we go back, just so I,
Absolutely.
so when you're saying this, we're increasing the rates, but their cost is gonna be decreased.
Correct.
The rates aren't gonna be decreased. Their cost is gonna be decreased.
Yes.
Well, one of the rates is,
One of the rates is
Is gonna
pass-through.
Okay,
Yeah, because the PCA is just a pass-through that
Right.
follows the price of power, and it
Right.
just so happens that at the same time we're gonna increase this base rate, the
Right.
PCA is going to be able to drop significantly because the debt on Bell River is gonna decrease. So we're gonna do
Right.
both at the same time. Does that make sense?
I understand it. I
Yeah.
just wanna make sure the public that has seen this can grasp it.
And Mark and I
Nice.
talked about that, about developing some sort of marketing material, and he said he would be happy to review what we put out to the public. And another note, Mark might mention it, this would not happen until January, even though we're approving it tonight. So we have some time to, develop whatever material we have.
Yeah, it's not critical, we're not in that big of a hurry to get the rate change in, and we should probably do it in conjunction with the change in power cost. If we didn't have the rate adjustment in the base rates, customers would have seen about a 6.1% rate reduction. So we're just taking some of that back. Now, one of the things, and this, I'm gonna complicate this whole thing further, and I apologize, but besides the reduction in the power cost adjustment mechanism, I also want to true up the power cost adjustment. And currently, what we're projecting your power cost to be next year would result in a PCA of about 1.7 cents. All right. In other words, that line item on the bill to customers for power cost adjustment will be 1.7. I want to get that closer to zero. Because the power cost, when you purchase power, the purchasing of power, you're purchasing both demand and energy. But when we bill it out to customers, it's all billed on energy. So the reason your cost of service studies showed the negatives for the large customers is because they use a lot of energy compared to the peak demand, because a lot of them are 24-hour day operations. So because of that, and the way that the power cost adjustment mechanism, because it hasn't been trued up, it's caused that inequity in your rates. So what I also want to do is to bring that down to something closer to about 5.5 cents. I'm sorry, to about a half cent. So customers will be charged about a half cent in our projection. In order for us to do that, we have to take the base, which is currently set at 4.32 cents. And what that means is when we look at your power supply cost, if it's greater than 4.32 cents, that difference gets passed on to customers. All right. I want to increase that base to 5.52 cents. By increasing the base, it's going to lower the power cost adjustment that the customers are going to see on the bill. Okay. It doesn't affect anything. I know it sounds weird. It doesn't affect anything. Other than your rate tariffs, we have to change the base. And the reason it doesn't affect anything is when you look at, like this slide, the residential rate design that we did, and you look at the energy, and under your current rate structures, your energy rate is 7.86 cents. Your power cost adjustment is 1.7 cents. I want to bring that down to 0.005 by increasing the base. So to increase the base, I have to increase the rate. So it's a 1-for-1. It balances out. You see what I'm saying? So the 7.86 cents goes to 8.88 cents. Most of that is due to the change in the base. So one is going down, the other one going up. So it balances to zero. Okay. Does that make sense? I know that's, power cost adjustments can be fairly complex. And I just want to understand that your current rate structure says, rate tariffs say that if your power supply costs are 4.32 cents, that difference is charged to the power cost adjustment. Now I want to say that if your power supply costs are greater than 5.52 cents, that difference is passed through to customers. Because we're saying now that 5.52 cents is buried within the base rates. Previously, you said 4.32 cents was buried within the base rates. So they're kind of balance each other out. One's going up, one's going down.
So we've effectively re-baselined the PCA, right, power cost?
We're
Right.
rebalancing it, yeah.
Okay, so we're basically saying that we think the base cost of power is 5.52.
Correct.
That's exactly correct. And it really
and if
is.
the cost
Our
goes
cost
higher
of
than that-
power is $55 to $62 a megawatt hour on average. So when we say the base rate's 4.32 cents, it's really not.
Yeah, it's never going to be that
That's why
low.
we're truing it up.
Okay.
And if it does go, there's also a negative. So
Yep.
if it did go below 5.52, then the power cost adjustment would fall negative.
Okay.
So it works both ways. Now, this rate design, you can see that the biggest change is really the $3 increase in the customer charge from 1080 to 1380. And over on the right is the impact of the rate change, excluding the change in the power cost adjustment, because that's going to change from where it is today. At 400 kilowatt hours, they're going to see $2.26 per month increase in their charges. At 1,000, about $1.16. And you can see actually the higher users are going to see some slight reductions from this rate change. The reason for that is because I'm putting more of the cost into the fixed customer charge. Okay, most of the increase is going into that fixed charge, which is where the industry is headed. And most all electric utilities nationwide are trying to get the customer charges set where they basically where cost of service says it should be. And we're not going there immediately. We're trying to do it in steps. And the first step was to increase it by $3, which, because we're also lowering the energy rate in conjunction with the PCA, at 400 kilowatt hours, they don't see a $3 increase, they see a $2.26 increase. But even these are misleading, and this is why I want to have my computer up.
Is that $3 per month? So what you're
Mhm.
$3
averaging
one increase.
per household?
Correct.
What about a business?
I'll get to that one.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. But because we're lowering the energy rate, it's not even a $3 increase, it's even less than that. But if you look at the change in the power cost, everybody is going to see a rate reduction. This graph is, and we actually did the change based on your current rates with your current power cost adjustment and what's projected. Everybody sees a rate reduction.
So that's the net monthly bill change for that power usage, for that chart.
That's correct, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that means people using the least power are going to see a $2 decrease per month and, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, let me see what that is. 400 kilowatt hours, it's
Oh,
48 cents reduction.
Oh, was I reading the wrong spot of the chart? Okay.
So this is actually dollar impact in here. You can see that. Can you read that in the back? So everybody's going to see a reduction, just some more so than others. And, residential is by far your largest class, and because I just want to check real quick, because we're here at your average consumption is about 630 kilowatt hours a month, just so you kind of get an idea.
It's pretty low. I wonder what mine is.
Lansing is 569, but their demographics are all different than Lowell. 630 is probably pretty average throughout the state of Michigan, and Michigan is far less than the other states. Like I do a lot of work in Arkansas, and the average in one utility is 1,400 a month. That's because they have electric heat. We use natural gas, so those different factors come into play. Michigan's a low consumption state. Residential customers are pretty good.
So we basically have two different types of rates, right? So we've got the monthly rate, or the monthly charge rate, basically, and then we've got the per kilowatt hour charge. And so when we say we've changed the rate, we've only changed really one of those three per kilowatt hour rates.
Correct.
Because we changed the all energy one by the one, that's the one we changed by the 1.45%. Is that right? And then
Actually,
because we changed the PCA rate, there's a net.
look here.
I think the 1.45% is the total change in dollars we collect from the class. You see what I'm saying?
That's overall for the whole class.
But then we're showing negative 3%.
You have to
That's where
factor in if the
confusion
PCA
is.
was set for
Okay.
1.7 cents.
Yeah.
See, we have nothing to do with the change in power cost. That's going to happen. So customers' rates are going to decrease by 6.1% if the board does nothing. Okay. But by this rate change, we're taking away some of that reduction to try to keep the utility financially stable.
Right.
That's in a sense what we're doing. Because otherwise, customers will see that 6.
I think that's a good way to explain it, that if we didn't do anything, because the cost of power is going to decrease, everybody would see on average a 6%.
Yeah.
But what your guys' action will do is make that 6% decrease only be
3%.
4 point or 3 point, whatever percent
Well,
decrease.
12.8.
Okay.
And we legally have to set the PCA properly because the PCA is only designed to recover the cost of power. What you guys are doing are increasing costs that are designed to cover other costs to run the utility. Does that make sense?
Right. And what we're doing is, over the years, Lowell Light and Power has been absorbing that cost of getting power to our customers. Our meter reading, everything that's in that, Lowell Light and Power has been absorbing that. So if you go to back and say, here, if we're just gonna give that cost adjustment, that 6%, we're just gonna hand that over, we're gonna be sliding backwards because we've been absorbing those real costs of getting power to somebody's home, and we can't do that if we're gonna be viable, and that's where we're doing this adjustment.
Right.
That's correct. Then you hit the nail right on the head.
Yes.
We needed to run our distribution system. Think about it as in this standpoint. Lowell Light and Power, I know you have a generating unit here, but for the most part, you're an aggregator of power supply. You're aggregating it for the benefit of your ratepayers. So your rates can stay lower than others, like an investor or utility like consumers. You're aggregating it. But you actually operate and control your wires, your distribution wires. So you take it from the transmission lines and you bring it down to a different voltage, and then you bring that throughout the community and you step it down to another voltage so customers can actually take it in their homes or facilities. That's the infrastructure that you own. That's the infrastructure that we're not recovering enough cost for. And because it just happens by coincidence that at the same time we're trying to increase that cost recovery here, power supply costs over here are going down. Only by coincidence, okay? Which is a perfect time. It just makes it more difficult to explain. That we're increasing rates, but you're gonna see a rate decrease. You kind of, now you get a better picture of it. Now, the next one is the residential, the general service. Now, the general service, we gave them the average increase of 1.45%. And we increased the customer charge from 175. But the energy rate, if you were to combine these two, the energy charge and the power cost adjustment together, we're actually decreasing it. But the energy rates are changing, they're actually going down because most of the cost recovery is through the customer charge. So when you look at it on a usage level basis at 500 kilowatt hours, they're going to see about 3.5% increase as a result of our change. Once you hit about 3,500, 4,000, it's going to be about 0.5% increase in rates. One of the things you have to remember is in general service customers, the usage is all over the place. Some may be at 500 and some at 10,000. So it's best to look at it on a percentage impact, but what I'm going to do is to actually show you the dollar impact.
Just a few spreadsheets.
This is the dollar impact, this lower slide down here. And you can see at 500 kilowatt hours, it would be about $3.40 increase in their charges. That's with the rate change. However, again, confusion. They're actually going to see a rate reduction. And at 500 kilowatt hours, they're going to see about a zero change. Okay, because the power cost adjustment's going down. So pretty much everybody's going to see a rate reduction. And there might be at 100 kilowatt hours, they would see an increase. Okay, I'm not going to, that we're not going to be able to offset it anymore. So if they're only using 100, but at 500 kilowatt hours and above, they're not going to see an increase. Is there any questions about the general service and what we've done? Now all the other rates, we had to increase them 1%, even though the cost of service study said they should be decreasing. And that's because we had limitations on how much we could change the residentials. So what we did here, we put a little bit in the monthly facilities charge, $75 to $85. The energy rate went from 4.55 to 5.7 basically, but the energy, the PCA went down, so that actually went down. And then the demand charge we increased by 50 cents. And as a result, when you look at the impacts, everybody in this custom class is going to see less than 1.5% increase in rates. And I'm also curious about the change after, actually, because remember I said earlier that power cost adjustment more adversely impacts the high load factor customers that use 24-hour day operations. That's what caused that fact that the cost of service study showed a reduction. They're really going to see anywhere from a 4% to a 7% rate reduction after everything's said and done. The general service primary is virtually identical. We did almost the same rate change. And pretty much everybody's gonna see about 1.5% increase or less. And then, general service with customers that own their own transformer, again, it's about 1.7% or less. These are higher load factors, so most of them will be in the middle of the chart. Now, those are the slides I put together on the more significant classes. You have some other smaller classes like street lighting that we gave increases to, and those largely only affect one customer, which would be the city. And we gave them an increase about 1.1%. All right, so nothing significant, nothing that's going to adversely impact the city. So the first question of the board is this, is how did we do? Did we design the rates in the manner in which you expected? I probably confused you by bringing in the public cost adjustments, I know that.
Well, I'd rather know it than not. I guess the question I had was you mentioned that the monthly, I don't know what we call that, the monthly facility charge, I guess, that you said it's not increasing by 3 doesn't bring it up to reflect what's actually incurred, right, to maintain the system. Like, what's the difference? Like, what is the actual monthly charge that would kind of correlate? I'm assuming, because I
I don't
think
mean to
there's like,
answer the question for you, Mark, but I think it was almost like $21 or $22 is what our
Yeah,
customer
just
charge
look at
should be.
that.
so like
And we
almost
were
double what
trying
it
to
is.
get there over a course of like 5 years, because from a PR standpoint, Mark, if we went to the true cost of service, $23, I mean, we would get ridiculed. People wouldn't understand.
Be a lot of backlash, and you don't have it. I'm going to be very honest. There's two types of customers that really get affected by the customer charge. Probably 3. One is somebody who installs solar. I don't know, because their usage declines. But the problem with not charging the customer charge is that other customers, that costs that under recovery get shifted to the residential ratepayers. The other ones is snowbirds, senior citizens. And when you look, Michigan is the only state I know that has senior citizen rate discounts. Okay. No other state has it because it's not cost justified. Matter of fact, you look at it, they're actually one of the highest cost class of customers to provide service to, and the reason is because a high percentage of them are seasonal. And so if they're somewhere like in Florida or Arizona in the winter, and we're not charging them the proper customer charge, our year-round ratepayers have to pick up that cost. But nonetheless, it does impact low-use customers. And so we don't want to move too fast on it, because that will then start leading to your phones ringing. I'd rather move gradually and slowly. And I'm an accountant, so I'm probably more conservative than I need to be. With a $3 increase in the customer charge, I doubt you'll get anybody calling complaining about it. But if you
Julie's
start-
eyes rolled.
You always get someone,
Yeah.
you know,
It
you
might.
can't say.
I've done this
You'll
with
get
utilities
some.
with 100,000 customers. Damn, we got any calls.
Yeah.
Southern California, we went from $3.60. The cost of service they said should be $19.60. I asked for $3 and the board said, no, we want to go 6. So I went from $3.60 to $9.60. And of course I was kind of concerned about it. Even that utility, they may have got a few. That was a 120,000 customer utility, but for the most part, very few complaints. But I'd rather just go 3, and just kind of move slowly. Of course, that was one of the things we talked about last time, and because it's not what I think, it's what you guys think. I can design rates however you want me to design it. I'm just giving you my experience of what's happened.
You were saying our goal is to get there to that.
Over the course, well, ideally you perform a cost of service study and rate design every 5 years. So over the course of the next 5 years, we try to get up to this.
Yeah, Yeah, it would take you about 4 to 5 years to get there.
So you're saying like every year we'd move it up a little bit and try
Mhm.
Till we get there, yeah.
to... So then the low-end homeowner that had a net bill decrease of, if you include the PCA and everything, was like $2 per month, I thought the sheet had.
The overall reduction.
Yeah, the
48
overall,
cents.
like, I wanted to say it was like $2 or something.
262?
There's a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of numbers here. Your average is about a little over 600, so it's $2.22 reduction in cost.
Okay.
So just on average.
So that's the one where if we had raised it, that monthly fee, every dollar we raise it impacts this.
Correct.
Um,
But even with that increase, they're only going to see, they'll see a rate reduction. Even though we're increasing the customer charge by $3,
right.
they're still seeing a rate reduction of $2.22.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we tried to move faster, right? So if we added like an extreme case under $10 to it, then all of a sudden their bill would be $8 higher per month because the monthly charge kind of directly goes into this monthly number, right?
I apologize, could you?
The this chart we had for the 222, that's the net bill difference, right? So then if we were to change that distribution so we had a lot more of the monthly charge, let's say we did it extremely up to like $20 or something like that, that it would basically just add that much more on to their average bill for a low-end user because they wouldn't see as much savings for the rate aspect because they don't use a whole lot.
That's correct.
So if we increased it like $10, they might see an increase of $8 or something
Yes.
to their bill.
You're absolutely right, because the $3 is fixed, so boom, it goes up $3.
Mhm.
Then we have reductions, but those reductions are based on your usage level. So at a certain point, you can see at 400 kilowatt hours, it's only a 48-cent reduction because there's only 400 kilowatt hours to get that rest of that savings on.
Mhm.
So, because of the lower energy rates.
And so this is why we were trying to not more gradually increase that rate, because otherwise they're going to see.
Yeah, let me show you. Let's say we went $6. How much is 3.12 reduction?
Are you trying to get it to add up to the same?
Yeah. You can see they would see a 52-cent increase in one.
4 cents.
Okay.
And if we, I should show you this because I don't always like to show extremes.
Yeah, so somebody who doesn't use power.
Yeah, but you can see that if we went $6,
Mm-hmm.
100 kilowatt hour consumption a month would see a $4.63 increase.
Okay.
The reason I don't
So-
show those low end is because you have such few customers out there.
Right.
And I don't like to scare the board or council when they see those changes.
So in this case, actually, even like at the 700 level, it's still a
Still a
decrease.
reduction. Yeah, even with,
So the PCA really is what's driving
yeah,
most of
correct.
what's going on right now.
Yeah. And you see, the average customer, even with all that changes, is going to see a number that's different now than what it was. So I must have screwed something up.
Oh, it's just the
still
starting
have
point is
You still have
100.
100 in
Oh,
there
that's why. Okay.
versus 400, whatever it was.
You can see I don't
Mhm.
look for spreadsheets too much anymore.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's good news, really. I just hope that the media picks up on the fact that we are reducing rates, even though we're increasing. So sounds so weird.
Yeah, and I kind of like what you said, Mark. The way we're recovering costs for the infrastructure is going up 1.45%. At the same time, we're reducing costs for the power supply that we buy by 6%. What we approved tonight was just the increase in the infrastructure portion. naturally the 6% will happen, and we're gonna do it at the same time, which will result in a 4.82% decrease.
Okay. Does anybody have any more questions on the rates? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the new electric rates. Part A. Will anybody
As
jump?
long as-
Well-
That was a question I had that was, I'm trying to figure out how to ask it. So we're basically increasing two rates then, because we're increasing the monthly facility charge and the per kilowatt hour charge, but then decreasing the power cost
CA.
adjustment.
Yeah, and-
Is there like a term, I don't know, because I think it'd be helpful to somehow find a way to explain that. Because there's like two components, there's, I guess really three components, right, to the per kilowatt hour piece. So there's the cost of power, which is part of the PCA, then there's just the cost to maintain the system that's dependent on the load versus the cost to maintain the system that's really just dependent on customers. So there's the two different rates we're gonna adjust upward, and then the one rate that we're gonna bring downward.
I think.
So could we just say we're gonna, the motion would be, the board agrees to adopt the rate recommendations in full that Mark and his company are proposing, instead of going into each single line item for all 5 different rates?
Maybe my question then is, what does that 1.45 apply to?
Okay, I thought that's what you were headed towards. So what I did is, you have the increase of $3 here.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to combine all these energy rates, this energy rate and your current power PCA, your energy rate is 10.25 cents currently.
Okay.
After this change, when everything is said and done in January, that rate will decrease to 9.38 cents, or almost a 10% reduction.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a $3 increase here and almost a 10% reduction in the energy rate.
Okay.
Does that maybe clarify it some?
So we kind of have like two rates, like the service rate and the energy rate, or
Yeah, the billing
So
basis on these are the same. So.
okay. Now that makes sense.
Which, the power cost adjustment, we have no, I mean.
That'll
that's-
happen naturally.
That's dictated to us. I mean, we're not saying that, oh, it's gonna go down by 6%, it's gonna go down by 8, or we're not voting on that. Because that's automatic, that comes from,
Mm-hmm.
How we get billed and what energy contracts and different plants we're already invested in, but I mean, it has to be lowered naturally.
With that said, I'd make a motion to approve the new rates as presented.
I'll support.
okay, it's been moved and supported to approve the rates that have been presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Unanimous, 4-0.
All right, second action item tonight is the adoption of a cash reserves policy.
I have a quick question to clarify it. Sorry, so this rate is going to be the same rate until we change it again, right? So it's not a graduating rate or anything.
No, this was.
It's the same rate. Well, the only thing that will change is the PCA.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, just to make that clear.
All right, the second action item tonight is the adoption of a cash reserves policy. Mark, I know that you had the economic development rate second, but let's go
That's
ahead
right.
and turn it over to you for the cash reserves policy presentation.
Now, when we did the cost of service study, we looked at your minimum cash reserves and went through, kind of tweaked some things a little bit. But the way we wrote the policy is we gave the detailed calculations, but we also simplified it, and it's the simplification that really we're focusing on today. And that simplification is that we want to maintain cash reserves above 120 days of operating expenses. All right. Now, this it shows the detail behind how we came up with it. We looked at your operation and maintenance cost, your O&M, the cost to run the distribution system, basically. And we said, okay, when we pay labor and supplies, we may go all through the month of January paying those expenses, but we really don't get that money recovered from customers until probably the first part of March. There's always that lag time difference between when you pay bills and get money from customers. And pretty much every utility in the country that bills monthly has a 45-day working capital lag. So we look at that. And then we look at power supply costs. The working capital lag is a little different than that. But we also look at your peak. And your O&M costs are pretty flat throughout the year. I'm not so worried about the changes month to month. But when it comes to power supply, there's substantial changes. So we look at the peak month of power supply costs. We look at when Lowell Power pays bills and when they get that money from customers. So in your case, the calculation came out at 12.4% of power supply costs that we need to put into the cash reserve bucket. We then look at the infrastructure, the age of the infrastructure, exposure to a catastrophic event. And that one is really just recognizing that that catastrophic exposure exists. The money I put into that bucket, which totals $671,000, is not going to cover a catastrophic event. But by the same token, we want to look at the cash reserves as a whole, total, not just that one line item, to cover a catastrophic event until adequate financing can be arranged. We're kind of trying to recognize it. Then we look at your debt service payments, your highest debt service payments throughout the year. And we look at your capital improvement program. And we actually average the 5-year capital improvements. So we don't look at it yearly, we look at it on an average of 5 years. The reason we do the averaging, it's more accurate to look at it annually, but what happens when you do that is your minimum cash reserve may go from 2.8 million one year, and the next year of a large capital improvement program, it jumps to 5 million. So to try to smooth and levelize that out, we use a 5-year average like that. So the total came out at about 2.8 million in 2018, increasing to 3.3 million. Now, I don't want you to have to go through this calculation and this analysis every year.
We will, though.
So
Just kidding with you, Mark.
Yeah. You may want to, but the policy, the way it's written, is we want to maintain 120 days cash on hand. All right? Because when we do the calculation, the revenues from the sales of electricity is $8.5 million. So your per day cash requirement is $23,000. Your minimum cash balance that we're targeting is 2.8. Basically, when you divide them out, it's 120 days when it comes out to. So that's where the policy is written, so that until it gets reviewed again, and this is not something I'd review every year, but the next time you do a cost of service study, you may want to have them look at the cash reserve requirements to reset this policy number, the 120. I think rating agencies would be happy with the way it's the policy has the detail. It wasn't just a dartboard, it was a methodology. So.
And again, this is a minimum. I mean, rating agencies, according to the CFO at WPA, 150, 180, some of them like to say 210 days cash on hand. But like I said in my memo, I think this is an important policy not just to have in place as the board and management changes over time, but also to give a transparent picture to the public to say, hey, this is why we have the cash we have on hand, and it's just not some arbitrary dollar amount, and we have no reason why we have the cash on hand. We have 3.3 for a reason, and this is how we got to it. So
Where does this number come in with what our charter says?
the charter says 10% of the original cost of investment in our system.
Okay.
And our system right now, I think, has $22 million in it, so it's 2.2 million is what the charter would mandate us. So
Okay.
this is actually more stringent than the charter.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're,
That doesn't cause any problems?
Nope. the charter is less of a requirement, but I'm not sure why the charter came up with 10% either. You know, it is what it is and we can't change it, but again, I don't know how much logic or rationale that.
It's attorneys.
Okay, there we go.
So my question, would this, and not doing any numbers, would this number, so if we're setting this policy, would this number ever decrease?
If our capital improvement plan went to $0, for example, so right now we're saying that 2.87 million, current portion of the capital plan is 1.06 million, correct?
Yes.
So if we decided never to invest another dollar in capital for the next 5 years, it would say we only need $1.8 million in cash.
So being a policy, if we're approving this policy, I think you have to have a little clause in there, whichever is greater, whatever the charter says, or whatever this number, because you're telling me that.
But the charter will always win no matter what. You know, the charter trumps this, like the Constitution trumps any state
Okay.
constitution. So we have to abide by that first. So maybe we should say, as long as we meet the charter threshold, then this applies.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
getting at.
Yeah, I think
Well,
that's agreed. That's a good language.
Yeah, or even just, I mean, even standalone, if this is the minimum reserve, then, you know, so as long as we meet, if this minimum happens to be less than the charter, well, then we meet the charters, and that's still greater than this minimum.
So, right.
There's two, basically we have two minimums we need to meet. One fluctuates,
It's a
one
good
doesn't
point,
so
Barry.
much, and
And if we keep it at the 120 days, then we'll recalculate this every year until the next time you do a study.
so then, so you're saying that the revenue is divided by 120 days, like the prorated revenue. That happens to be close to what the complex calculation came out to be.
Yes, and that's why I said it at that. That comes out to about 2.8 million, and this one comes out to
2.9,
about
yeah.
100,000.
Yeah, because if you look at the bottom, it's actually 116 days, then 116, then 114, then 117, then 122. But just to simplify it and not have to change it every
Yeah.
year, you just set it at 120. Correct, Mark?
Correct.
So the policy would actually be to set it to the simple one, with the rationale being that it's going to closely match this analysis that kind of tries to count how much we really would need.
Correct.
And if I understood all the complex part, reading through the slides that we had, basically it's just saying that here's the worst case scenario for 120 days of debt payments and other payments plus the risk of the infrastructure depending on how old it is. So there's like, it was factored in with the depreciation of,
Yeah.
and so you kind of add that up and it says, well, we would need in a worst case scenario, in theory,
120 days.
yeah, 100, well, yeah. Well, in this case, I guess 116 days,
Yeah.
funded at this much, and then the simple formula gets us close enough to that.
Correct.
Okay, so basically this becomes the rationale for the other policy that we're going to adopt. That- Okay.
Does that make sense?
Any further questions? With that, I would entertain a motion to adopt the cash reserve policy as presented by Mark Proj.
I'll make a motion to accept the cash reserve policy as written, presented.
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
All right, third action item tonight is the adoption of an economic development rate. Mark will be presenting this again. This is another separate study he did for us, and I did write this in the memo that I included in your packet. This currently is an action item in the strategic plan action item list, the development of an economic development rate, and obviously the goal is to attract economic development, let the city, the chamber know about this, and use it as a tool to attract new business. So, Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
I put, what we did is same with the line extension policy. These kind of go hand in hand. Because we look at the contribution margin. In other words, in your general service demand rate, your power supply costs are about $3.4 million. In addition, you pay a variable cost to the city, contribution is about $165,000. And if you were to take, the revenues, the actual revenues from this class, a little less than $5 million. And so the fixed cost contribution is 1.4. That would be the $5 million less the power supply cost and contribution. It's this fixed cost contribution that we can discount temporarily without harming our existing ratepayers. Because these costs are not going to change. We're just using our infrastructure more efficiently at that point with the excess capacity. So the potential reduction that we give is about 28%. So now I kind of rounded these a bit to simplify it. But now I have two options here, but we have a 5-year and a 3-year. Now a 5-year economic development rate would say that in year 1, if this customer comes to our system, we will give them a 25% discount on their electric rate for 1 year. The second year, we'll give them a 20% discount. The third year, 15%. The fourth year, 10%. The fifth year, 5%. And after that, it's the regular rate tariff that they're billed. So, this is one option. The other option is say, okay, we want to just phase it in over 3 years. So year 1, we give them 25%, year 2, 17%, year 3, 8%, and year 4, they're on the full rate. Now, by offering this rate tariff, again, I want to emphasize we're not harming existing ratepayers. If this can be used to attract new customers, even though we're giving them a discount, we're not harming them. Because we have this fixed cost contribution margin, but we have to phase it in because eventually this fixed cost contribution will really become variable. Because as economic theory goes, all costs are variable in the long run, so we have to take it out. And that's what we've done here. So, obviously, electricity, unless it's a data processing center or something, electricity is really substantial. It's one component in attracting new business. Property taxes, skilled labor force, and where you're on the transportation network are other factors that can be even more important. But this is just one more tool in your economic development bucket, so to speak, by offering it. You can also offer this to existing customers that are willing to expand their production needs, for example, and as a result need an upgrade of their service. So, for example, we have a large company and they have the potential, the corporate office says, we're looking at multiple places, because actually within corporate companies we run into a lot where the individual companies are competing amongst themselves for new business. So by the managers in these companies having this available to them, they can say, if we can bring this line here, and as a result of increasing or adding this line, any increase in the electricity that's being used, not the base at the current rate, but the increase, we can also give them this discount. And so managers tend to like it, local managers, because that's another tool in their bucket to get work from the corporate office to come this way. So remember, there's new customers, and it can be used for existing customers also that expand their usage of electricity. So does this make sense?
So essentially what we're saying is that the fixed costs are the ones that are basically already there. It's more capacity, so to speak. And to bring in somebody new, it's going to decrease the remaining free capacity, but it's not going to change how we operate. And so we're kind of saying, all right, you get a discount for coming in and adding to this revenue stream, but then after a certain point, you've got to start paying your share, because at some point you have to save up for a new bucket of capacity and then to maintain it. So
I have mixed emotions. So